good time. So we'll start with our first dish. It's a local baby kale salad with spiced pecans, used blue, cheese, crab maple syrup, balsamic vinaigrette. So we'll start with, and everything, all these recipes are very easy. A lot of them can be made ahead of time. So, you know, if you get home, you want to prep something, you have it ready to go, and you can refrigerate it, and then you get home, you can throw it together. We'll start with the dressing. And I use a blender. If you don't, you can do it by hand. I like using the blender. It just emulsifies it more, and it gets it smoother, and it'll stay together. So one thing also with the recipes, which I have, you'll see, is I have fluid ounces or ounces. A lot of times with recipes, it doesn't say ounce, it just says ounces. There's obviously fluid ounces and, you know, weighted ounces. So a lot of times with recipes, they just put ounces. So it's really, at least with my recipes, I'm clear I just put fluid ounces. Now, so I'm sure somebody's going to find a mistake. What we do is, so we use a balsamic vinegar. It's just a standard, regular balsamic vinegar. Okay, so we're going to do everything in the blender. It's a very easy. Crown maple syrup. Crown is located, actually, it's right here in the Hudson Valley. If there's actually information, all that on the back of the things, their website and where they're located. I think it's Medina, in New York. They're great. They're great local stuff. So we're just going to take this, and it's a little noisy, so I'm not going to talk while I'm doing this. So we have our dressing, and take a check on the flavor of it. Just one thing to remember with spices or any seasoning, you can always add more. You can, you know, it's easier to add more. You can't take it out, you know. And then one time, like, people will, you'll see, take salt or any spice and just pour it right into the container from it. Don't do that. One day you'll learn the hard way that it's going to just go in. Always either do it into your hand or measure it. Okay, so we have our dressing. We have our kale. This is locally grown baby lacinato kale. We get this from Over Creek Farms, which is up in Wappingers Falls. They have greenhouses right now. So we have our pecans. You can take our pecan. We got a pound and a half of pecans. If you don't like pecans, I'm using half pecans. You can use pieces. You can do this with pistachios. You can do it with almonds. And it's very easy. You preheat an oven, 375 degrees. We don't have an oven here, so we're gonna fake it. You're gonna take that. You're gonna add your egg whites. Put them right in, and then your seasonings. We're adding with cinnamon, dark brown sugar, kosher salt, and cayenne pepper. Like I said before, you can change these. I like the cayenne pepper. It's nice. It cuts the sweetness of the maple syrup and the sweetness of what you're adding to the pecans. These are great with your drinks as well. These are really good with having some drinks. So you're adding our cinnamon, our cayenne pepper, a little bit of kosher salt, and we have a quarter pound of dark brown sugar. Kosher salt is a coarser grain. Regular salt, which is iodized, has a very high mineral content, and I find it very hard to control. You tend to over-season, and it kind of gives it, to me at least, a metallic flavor to it. We use also sea salt as well, but in general purpose cooking, kosher salt works really the best, and it's probably the most reasonably priced. So you're going to mix this all together. I'm going to put it on a baking sheet, or if you don't have a baking sheet, with paper you can use a ceramic dish. Make sure everything is coated. You're going to place it in the oven. It's in the oven. And then the temperature, you're going to probably about 20 minutes. You know, people's ovens run different temperatures. The best way to check an oven is if you have an oven thermometer and check, but also in each oven is different, what's called hot points, where some parts of the oven are hotter than the other. So, like I have here for 20 minutes, it's an estimate, you really want to keep an eye on it. And what you want to do is you're going to take the pecans out, they're going to look like this, they're going to be coated You don't want them burnt. You want a nice brown color to them, where they're crispy and everything is sticking to the nuts. Then we have to use blue cheese, which is 100% sheep's milk cheese. This is from Old Chatham's Sheep Herding, another Hudson Valley, or New York State, I'm not sure if it's technically Hudson Valley. It's a Roquefort style sheep's milk cheese. It's not a very assertive. It's kind of a more, mellower type of blue cheese. So what we do is we're going to take a little bit of blue cheese. When we have our dressing, what I like to do is mix a little bit in with the salad itself. And add some of the pecans as well. I'm going to take some fresh pepper. All our spices, we don't buy any ground spices here. We grind our own spices. What happens is, a lot of times if you buy a ground spice, it's been sitting in a shelf or in a warehouse for maybe a year, it could be up to 2 years, and the oils are all dried out. So what we do is we get whole seeds, we get the cumin, fennel, we toast them, so it brings out the oil, and then we grind them in a spice grinder. So it's always has much more flavor to it. So we can add a little bit of dressing. So you can use your hands. I can't because let's see what happens. I'm not allowed to use my hands at the restaurant. But you can put this in the bowl. A little bit in the center. Add a little bit of cheese on top. Okay. And some one thing also you want to do is make sure that when you serve something like a salad, that your plates are cold. If it's what's going to happen is if you put your salad, your greens on a warm plate, it's going to wilt the greens. So that's your salad.
Voila.
You have any other questions while we're waiting for your food? We'll talk about what we're. Okay, our next dish is going to be a line court red snapper with shaved fennel, baby arugula, Jacob's cattle, heirloom beans, and tomato broth. Originally I was going to do with striped bass, but striped bass now, because of the temperatures of the water, the fishing on the East Coast has been really thrown off by a lot of the weather. Everything's been frozen. Clams, there's a shortage of clams, there's a shortage of lobsters and oysters as well. What's happening also, what happens is, as they take it out of the water, everything freezes. So you'll see some of the fish prices the last couple of weeks have really fluctuated a lot. And as like we do with our produce, we know where we're getting our seafood from. I use a couple of local companies, and I use a company called Sea to Table, which is sustainably fished, which they have people at the docks all over the country. We get a daily list of what's available, and I mean I can tell you the boat they come from, the captain, so we know, pretty much what's going on. So with this dish, the same thing. Like I said, any white flaky fish works great with this dish. Codfish, snapper, bass, salmon as well. Salmon would hold up as well. So we're using the fish dish. So we're start with the tomato broth. What we do for the tomato broth is we take. Right now it's hard with the tomatoes, but we get we have a good source of tomatoes that are pretty ripe. You're just taking a nice beefsteak tomato. If you don't have beefsteak tomatoes, you can use cherry tomatoes. Any type of tomatoes that you have, you can use yellow tomatoes. It would work as well. The ripest, especially this time of year, the ripest tomatoes that you can find, which is not so easy. Believe me, and even these are a little hard, and these are actually pretty good. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the tomato, and we preheat our oven to 375 degrees. We're going to core it. We're going to cut the tomato in half. We're leaving the skin on. We're going to take out the seeds. All of them. And this liquid, this here, we don't throw anything out. I'll use this. We make a lot of vegetable stock here, and I'll use that for the vegetable stock. We also work with a local farmer now. All our extra vegetable scraps, we're composting with him, so we're trying to cut down on the amount of. So we're doing a lot of initiatives here. So we'll take that. I'm not going to do all of them, but just so you get the gist of what we're doing here. So we take our tomatoes. We're going to take a little bit of chopped garlic. We have some chopped garlic here. You don't want a lot, so I mean, take that. We're going to take salt and pepper. Taking some more kosher salt, some fresh pepper. And we take a little bit of, I don't have it on here, we just take a little bit of blended oil, just so it doesn't, so it coats it. And toss it. Depending on how clean you like your kitchen and how good your tossing skills are. I don't do this at home. My wife doesn't let me do this at home. Put it on in a tray with it facing up. If you have a convection oven at home, you know, you can use that as well. It kind of works actually good with this. We're going to take these, we're going to put them in the oven for about 40 minutes.
Oh, magic oven.
Magic oven. You're going to be surprised how good this oven works. And they'll come out looking like this.
Oh, nice.
So you want it a little charred, gives it a little flavor, not too much. I mean, the garlic is getting a nice color to it.
Can you turn them while they're in the oven?
No,
Just keep them
just
warm?
keep them like that. Because you also want any liquid in there to bake into it, so you're really doing that.
Right.
So to make the tomato broth, we're going to take this. We're going to take our tomatoes, put it right in the blender. The tomatoes, if you want to do them ahead of time, or you can even make the sauce ahead of time as well. We're going to take some extra virgin olive oil, half a cup. We want this to be liquidy but still viscous. We're going to take that, and the oil. We make our own mushroom stock here, which is basically mushrooms, carrots, celery, onions, a little bit of white wine. You could use chicken stock. You can use, you know, even just water if you had to. You really don't do that, but you can. So we're adding a little bit of mushroom stock to it.
Is mushroom stock just to keep it vegetarian?
Well, it's to thin it out, and to we
As
do.
opposed to chicken stock?
Yeah. And also, it doesn't add, it's not as strong as a chicken stock, especially since we're doing a fish dish. We use a lot of mushroom stock at the restaurant. We probably use more mushroom stock, vegetable stock, than any other stock that we use at the restaurant at all. We do some vegetarian dishes, and so we got some salt and some pepper. But it's kind of a nice neutral flavor where, especially for fish, a lot of times if you use fish stock will get a little too strong. And so we're going to add this, our handy dandy blender. And the best thing to do is if you actually make extra stock, when you know, a lot of times when you're making stock, it's probably more than you're really going to use at one time, is to put it in those plastic containers I have. And give it about 3/4 of the way, because whenever you freeze something, it expands. And then you freeze it, and then take it as you need it. It'll hold up well in the freezer. You can put it in ice cube trays, take it out of the cubes, and put those in freezer bags. But I would use those. You know, everyone always has those plastic containers, and I never throw them away. I have stuff in the kitchen, all labeled and everything on them. And they're great. You know, it's a story. You're gonna make chicken stock. You're gonna probably use 2 chickens. You're gonna have maybe a couple gallons of stock. If you're not going to make soup and use it right away, put it in the containers, and put it into containers that you're going to use in size. You don't want to put it in too big a container,
Right.
and then you defrost it and you so just, you know, the pint containers are great. So this is, you see, this is
Wow.
how this looks.
Oh, wow.
So if you want to, maybe you want to pass it or anything.
Wow.
Okay. So now, for the beans, we're using Jacob's cattle bean. The Jacob's cattle bean is originally from Maine. I actually get it from a small farm in Maine. The Jacob's cattle bean is actually on the Ark of Taste. It's originally from like the 1800s. It's like one of the lost
There you go.
beans. Very few people make it. I was lucky to get a couple 100 pounds this year. One thing when you're using beans, even if you're using something like a jackrabbit or something, you know, band, the best thing to do, you have to do with beans is sometimes you have to look for stones. A lot of times there'll be pieces of dirt or pieces of stone to get through. Because a lot of times, especially with the local beans, it's not as clean as the regular commercial beans, but you still need to go through them to find stones. You'll find small stones, because the beans go through filters, and there's stones that are smaller than this. So we go through all the beans, I lay them out on a flat tray, kind of sort them through. A lot of times you can soak these overnight. You really don't need to soak these. Just put these in a pot.
What kind of beans?
These are called Jacob's cattle. They're actually, there's information on them as well. We take these. One thing else you gotta remember when you cook beans, they grow. It's good, you're gonna start with, so good rule of thumb is they double in size. It says 1 cup of beans equals 2 cups cooked. So it's gonna grow on you. What we do is take 2 shallots, whole shallots, leave them in the bowl. Some fresh thyme. I like to use lemon thyme, it has a nice citrusy flavor to it. A couple of whole pieces of garlic, a couple of bay leaves. One of the reasons why we do this is it's very easy to pull it out after you cook it, and it still imparts the flavor. So we're gonna do that, we're gonna add a little salt,
Yeah, the big pieces.
and a little pepper. We use water to cook these, you can use mushroom stock as well. We're not using the broth on this from the beans, so we're gonna take that, we're just gonna cover it with about double the amount of water. And whenever you're cooking vegetables or beans, you wanna start, if it's not a green vegetable, you wanna start with cold water. Green vegetables, you start with boiling water. Any other vegetable, you always start with cold water. What you want to do is bring this to a boil, and then once it boils, you want it to simmer. Keep an eye on it. You may have to add a little bit more water. And what you do is, once they're cooked, you're going to taste them. They're going to be tender. Leave them in the water. Let them cool in the liquid that they're cooking in until you need to use them. They'll keep them nice and moist. If you take them out and don't use the beans right away, they're going to dry out. They're also going to plump up a little bit. So you're going to cook these, they're nice and beautiful beans, and then once they're cooked, they're going to look like this. They're going to be, see how large they got, and so we're not going to wait, we're not going to sit here 40 minutes. We have our beans, and we have our sauce, which can be made ahead of time. So we have our shaved fennel. One thing, when you can do the fennel ahead of time, you want to keep it in acidulated water. You want to put it with a little bit of lemon juice in there with the water so it doesn't oxidize. We use a mandolin or a meat slicer. You can do it by yourself, by hand. One thing is to also make sure you have a sharp knife. First off, you want to make sure you have a sharp knife. You want to keep your thumb back and keep your fingers bent back so you're not on your fingertips. You want to use your knuckle as a guide. You don't want to go over your knuckle. And you just want to do this. One thing also, you have to remember with knives, if it be it a chef's knife, a slicing knife, knives are shaped a certain way for a reason. Like a slicing knife, you want to use a long knife. It's meant to be used in one stroke. The chef's knife is curved, you want to use the curve. A lot of times, you don't really need to move your whole arm. You're just rocking your wrist. So you're coming down like this. Also, one thing people do, which is a huge mistake, and the first time you work in my kitchen, I see you do it, I yell at you and I tell you, you're ruining your knife. A lot of people will take their knives, and when they're doing something, you scrape with the end, okay? Which ruins your knife. So when you're doing this, what you want to do is you want to flip over, use the back edge of your knife to move it. Good knife. Knife skills 101. So we have our fennel. Okay. We have our baby arugula. This is our baby arugula. We do the dish also at the restaurant. We use some baby kale. But since we did baby kale in our first course, we're going to use some baby arugula. This baby arugula is from Over Creek as well. He brought me some of this the other day. It's unbelievable. It's really great. He grows everything in dirt, which is huge. You'll see. Sometimes you'll find people that are growing microgreens or dirt, and I'll show you, actually they have it in like a composty type of material. It's good, but it doesn't have the flavor of anything that's grown in dirt. So we're going to start our fish. The larger pieces of fish, sometimes you can cook you start them in the pan on the stove, and then finish them in the oven. You start in the oven and finish them. So what you want to do is let me turn that around. For the fish, I like using, it's a metal black iron pan, which is, once you get it, you want to season it, get it hot, hit it with some oil. If you do put water on it, you have to re-season it. You want to make sure it's dry when you're done using it, and hit it with some oil, otherwise it's going to rust. But this pan, get a nice high temperature on it. With the fish, we're going to season the fish. We're going to get this pan hot. We're going to season the fish on both sides. A little salt. A little pepper. Always season on both sides. One times you may have a problem with, a lot of times you cooking at home, the fish sticks to your pan. Easy way to do it is use a non-stick pan, which works. But the reason why that happens is the pan is not hot enough. So you want to put your oil in, enough to coat the bottom. And this is the blended oil as well. So you see it's nice, you don't want to go overdo it. You're going to wait till the pan starts getting very hot. When you put the fish in, you want to put it in skin side down. It does a couple things. First off, it gets nice caramel, nice crispy skin on it. If you like skin. If you don't like skin, don't put the skin. And what happens is it keeps the fish moist. So what you're going to do is you're going to cook it probably 3/4 of the way on the skin side down, and then flip it over right at the last minute. You're going to see it's going to start getting a little white on the meat. Let's get a little hotter. Do it. So we're going to put skin side down. One thing also, which a lot of people do, is when you put the fish or anything in a pan, you want to put it, when you drop it, that it falls this way. Because what's happening is if any oil splashes, it's going to splash away from you. All right? So we let that go.
Why can't you just put it in the oven first?
Well, you won't get crisp on the skin. You want it caramel. What's it is caramelizing. You're gonna bring out some of that. There actually is some sugars in there. You're getting a nice brown. So we're gonna pretend we put it in the oven. You turn it down to like a medium heat. Because what's gonna happen, especially with a thick piece of fish, it's gonna burn.
Okay.
It's gonna burn before you cook it. So you're gonna see it now. So I'll show you.
Yep.
It's starting to get a little white here. Would it be in the oven? You'd want it to be a little more white. You're gonna see it's gonna be whiter till about here, so 3/4 of the way. And then what you're gonna do is you'll take it out of the oven, flip it, and depending on how thick the fish is, you can put it back or you can finish it. And you see how nice and brown it's gotten. Actually, it's a little pan was a little too hot. Even I make. So we have this here. It's a great item. We're in the oven right now. So now we're gonna get our dish ready. We're gonna take another pan. This is a nice heavy duty. You want a pan that's thick, that's not gonna, nice even heat to it. Any brand is good. One thing just to make sure, especially you want to get pans that are oven proof, that have handles that can go in the oven. So a lot of times they don't, and you put it in the oven, you're going to have a pan with no handle. Also plastic in your thing. So you want to get this hot. We're going to add a little bit of olive oil. It's blended oil, I'm sorry, just a little bit. We're going to add a little bit of oil. We're going to take our fennel, add the fennel to it. We want to wilt this. We don't want this to get too brown. So then we're going to take some of the beans, add a little bit of beans to it. Okay. Okay, so what we're doing is we have our beans in here, we're just going to get these going. The beans are already cooked, so we're just getting it so it's cooked, it's warmed up. We're gonna take some of our baby arugula and that. You don't want to cook this very long. You're basically just trying to wilt this. Okay, so we have that. You take a bowl. You want a nice flat bowl, something easy to get access to. We're going to take some of our sauce. You can either do this room temperature or you can warm it up. And put this on the bottom of the bowl.
Do you ever add any water to help the wilting?
If it's a dry vegetable, I mean, this says, you gotta remember, like the fennel, this could be in the water, so it's gonna have some moisture to it, so it's gonna steam. We're gonna taste this. Plus the beans will have should have a little bit of liquid as well. We're gonna add a little salt and pepper to this. I'm gonna take this and put this right in the middle. Okay. We're gonna take some of this extra. This is an organic extra virgin olive oil that I get from Italy. But any extra virgin olive oil is fine. Take a little bit, just a little bit to finish, a little bit in here. We're gonna take our fish out of the oven. Take the nice piece. Then on top.
Oh, God.
You don't want, you want to put the oil in before you put the fish in, because you don't want to put the oil on the skin. A lot of times, like when you're doing chicken or any poultry, anything that has skin on it, you don't want to sauce it because you're working so hard to get the nice crispiness on the skin. If you add sauce and put the oil on it, it's going to, defeats the whole purpose. We have some microgreens here. These are, I'm actually getting from London. This is a little bit of micro cilantro. Just taking some right on top. You can do anything. Basil works well as that, and that's your dish. The pecan pie, there's three components here. We have the crust, we have the filling, and then we have the caramel sauce. Just waiting for something for the caramel sauce. I'm not going to physically actually do the crust. Basically, what you're doing is you're taking the butter, the sugar, it's 4 ingredients. You're going to take the flour, everything gets weighed. You're going to take the butter and the sugar, put it in a mixer, and what's called creaming it. You want to incorporate some air so it gets nice and fluffy. You're going to add, you're going to lower the machine so when you add the flour it doesn't fly all over the kitchen and make a mess like I did right here. And then once the flour is in, you want to add the eggs one at a time. Once it's made, you're going to want to put it into a bowl and refrigerate it. What happens is when you refrigerate it, you're relaxing the glutens in the flour. And cake flour is very low in gluten. Gluten is what gives the bread or anything is laxicity. And so once you want it to relax a little bit, so what you can do is you can roll it out on a floured surface and it'll have a little more give to it. You want it to be thin. Here we have, maybe, I don't know, a 1/16 of an inch. What we're going to use here is a small pan. In your home, if you want to do it in a larger pan, it'll work. So with flour or doughs, you can freeze. So if you want to just do it in small package, or the recipe, just if you find it, cut the recipe in half. So once it's rolled out, we're going to take our shell here. We're going to just put it in. You want to put it in carefully. Put a little bit of flour into the shell so it doesn't stick. You can use a tart pan which has a bottom to it. You can just push it out once it's cooked. You can use a pie tin. You can use anything. You're just going to take this and just cut it off. So we have our shell. If you want to, with a larger shell, you can just poke a few holes in it so it doesn't rise. We're not going to cook it. We're going to cook the shell with the filling. We're not going to do it with. A lot of times you'll cook the shell first. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the caramel sauce. The caramel sauce can be made ahead of time. The one thing is if you make it a day or two before, you want it to get soft and then heat it up again. It's going to become like a big rock. So what we're going to do is for the caramel sauce, we're going to take 1 pound of sugar. 1 pound of sugar. You're going to take a little bit of water just to help it dissolve a little bit. You're going to put it on a medium flame to start. This is something that you need to really stay with, because it's going to, once it starts to turn to caramel, you're going to eat. Oops, it's no calorie. It's gonna come real. It's gonna happen real fast. You really need to keep an eye on it. Okay. So what happening here is, as we're talking, you see the sugar is starting to bubble. You want to make sure that the side it gets off the sides, because it's going to start to crystallize on the sides. As it's going, you have it on a low temperature. You don't want to do it too fast. It's going to start to caramelize. So as you see, it's starting to caramelize a little bit, and we're getting very close. You really want to keep an eye. You don't want to stir it too much,
And why is that?
because you're cooling it down as well. And
Okay.
and you're going to get too much on the sides, and the more you see people spooning, you're cooling things down. You don't want to overcrowd the pan. You don't want to, the more you move it, you're incorporating air and cooling it down. So you see, it's almost there. We have our heavy cream. I use a 40% fat heavy cream. You don't want to use half and half. You want a 40% fat content, for especially if you're drinking coffee. Use this. You see now it's how dark it's gotten. Everyone see it? You want to turn down the flame a little bit, and what you're going to do is add the heavy cream to it. You have to be very careful when you're doing this. Okay, you have a lot of steam.
Nice facial.
Nice facial.
You gotta be careful. If this gets stuck to you, it burns. So you really need to be careful. Okay, so we have our caramel sauce here. Okay. Yeah, there's one cool. Okay, so you have that. So what we're gonna do now is make our filling. We're gonna take our. You want to use some broken pieces of pecan, so you're getting this nice flavor to it, not just like dry in chunks and halves. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our eggs. We have 6 eggs, minus a few little whites. We're going to take our eggs. We're going to take our sugar. And we're using, make sure we get everything out. That's one thing you really need to be careful. Like when you really want to get everything out. You want to have a plastic spatula. And take everything out. So we're going to add our sugar, our syrup. We're using a light corn syrup. If you use a dark corn syrup, which you can use, it's going to give it a little more caramel flavor to it. Substitute. Okay, so we're going to take our and whip this together. You can use a mixer. This amount, you can do it by hand. Really. Okay. So we're going to add some cognac. You can use bourbon would work, any type of whiskey as well. Make sure you always have a little extra for yourself. Yes. So we're going to add our beers and cognac. Okay, we're adding some vanilla extract. All right. Get this nice incorporated. We're going to add our cornstarch. This is going to thicken it right up once you cook it. Same thing, we want to take this out. Okay, you want to make sure you really mix this well and get all the lumps out. Make sure, and then if you're using a mixer to really, as you're doing it, to stop the mixer and scrape the bottom, so make sure, a lot of times you'll have pockets of unmixed. So we have a nice mixture to it. We're going to take our pecans. If you want to use, hazelnuts would work on this, or you can mix some nuts. There are some pistachios in here as well. Some almonds. You can do like a 5-nut tart. You can do that as well. We'll take this. Okay, we're going to take our shell. You want to make sure you really mix it well, and that you scrape get it from the bottom. You're going to add your your mixture, you wanna bang a little bit, some of your air bubbles out. You're gonna put it in your oven for 25 minutes. The same thing with the oven. Best way to check your baking is use a toothpick. Is as it starts getting firm, you don't want it to get hard. You're gonna take a toothpick, put it in there, and it comes out where it comes out smooth and clean. It's cooked. When you're doing a genoise or a cake, it's the same thing. Toothpicks come in very handy besides your teeth. It's a nice tool to have. So what we're gonna do is we have our pecan pie comes out like this. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take some of the caramel sauce. And you can use as little or as much caramel sauce as you like. Put it on. This. You can do whatever design you want on there. You can play around with it. So, what we have on the plate, besides the design, we put some creme anglaise, so basically just a vanilla cream.
Oh my gosh.
And we have some whipped cream on top. And put it right here. Obviously, my plate is a little
That's done
messy.
by hand, the creme anglaise?
Yes. What we do is it's in a squeeze bottle. We chefs use a lot of, you see a lot of squeeze bottles. And we do is it'll put like this, and then you take a toothpick or a knife, and you pull it through.